How do you convert your faith from failure? How do you convert your failures into faith? Hi, my name is Ann McNeil, and I am always excited every Saturday morning as the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind co hosts, as we come before you and share from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Today, we're talking about one of those subjects that we all talk about, but are we really living that life of faith? Our principle today is focused on the principle of faith. And oftentimes we think about, uh, whether it's biblical, whatever it is, wherever you get your faith from. Napoleon Hill tells us that it is his second step to riches from his book of the 13 principles. But what is faith to you? Today, our desire is to share with you how we use our faith, some faith successes and some faith struggles, some faith challenges, some faith failures that we have lived long enough by faith, exercising that faith to turn that faith into futuristic opportunities. But I'm not here alone. I'm not here alone. So let me bring on and welcome again to the podcast my co host, Dr. Peter James. Good morning, sir. How are you this
Good
morning?
morning, good morning, good morning to you. How are you doing there, Ann McNeil?
Listen, I always say if I were any better, Peter, I would be you. And today I decided to wear white. And well, it's really cream in order of your white cream shirt. So people are saying, well, what is she in? Yes, she is in white. She's in white in support of Dr. Ch.
Well, listen, I'm so excited to be here as to have this discussion with you. We're missing our esteemed colleague, Galen
Yes.
Bingham, the leadership strategist. We miss him today because this is the type of discussion that he would just relish to dive on into this faith chapter, this faith principle of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And this, we always say this. This chapter is very important. This chapter is one of the backbones. And for me, this chapter has a lot of meaning because in the absence of faith, what do
Mm.
we do? Where do we go? How do we act? And oftentimes we don't realize it. Mostly in hindsight, we'll see, oh, what was I thinking? What was I doing? And the truth of the matter is we probably weren't thinking. We probably were on autopilot. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. But how can we be more cognizant now? Hopefully by the end of this, we can think about how we can be more cognizant with our faith, right?
Well, let's talk a little bit about before we go to our 13 principles
Okay.
video to give all of our listeners. And while you're settling in with your coffee, with your tea, with your water, with your juice, please remember to subscribe to this channel, but also comment, like, and share the podcast. Text someone this morning, maybe someone from your family, maybe someone from your religious institution, and join us in this conversation. Put your questions in the chat on YouTube and dialogue with us and let us hear from you about your questions, but also maybe some of your stories or some of your challenges or some of your points of memories, if you will. Sometimes there are quotes. Napoleon Hill gives us a few to start with, and he tells us that faith, you want to have faith in yourself. You also want to have faith in the infinite. And before you actually begin, you want to be reminded, what is faith? He says to us that faith is the eternal elixir, which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of your thoughts. And I'd like to challenge and ask you, are you actually acting on that impulse of thought by faith? not actually having to see, but just going forth and believing that whatever you desire is going to happen. But he also shares with us that faith really is the starting point of the accumulation of all riches, not just some riches, but all riches. Faith is also known as the only antidote to failure. Faith is also the element or the chemical, if you will, which when you mix your faith with prayer, and I like to say auto suggestion and affirmations, and you are able at that point to begin to communicate with the infinite. That's what faith does. And we're going to talk about that during the podcast. Faith is also the element which transforms an ordinary vibration of thought. I'd like to also say faith is the only thing that transforms an ordinary person. Can I say that again? Can I say that again? Faith is the only thing that transfers and transforms, and I like to also say transmute, if you will, an ordinary person. Is that you? Is that you? Think about that. Ordinary people with the vibration of your thoughts, which you can create and mix with your faith and connect that with the spiritual equivalent for whatever it is that you are desiring. Point is, all of us are ordinary people, but by faith we do extraordinary things, because by ourselves and of ourselves it's not going to be possible without having the persistence and the faith with the action, of course, to achieve that which you desire. And then finally, he tells us that faith is the only agency through which the cosmic force of the infinite can be harnessed and used by man. Peter, I could go on because this is one of my favorite principles. And I do say that about every principle. Okay. So I think the whole group of them, when you combine them together, I do strongly believe that it is how we are able to magnetize and also utilize our faith. So I'll come back to you and we can begin to tee up that video. But your thoughts?
Yeah, we're getting ready to tee up these 13 principles to give everyone an overview of Napoleon Hill's phenomenal text, Think and Grow Rich. If you are joining us today and you have never secured a copy of this text, today is your day. Please secure it right away because it provides some insights to not just career, business, but also to life. Here's a great example. I'm going to tee it up and then I'm going to go to the video. And for those of you who are watching, what did it look like when you didn't have faith in something, in anything? Reflecting on it in your life, career, or business, you didn't have faith. You didn't have the intention of faith. What was life like? And I'm going to start with you after the video, but think about what that may have looked like in your life and career, how you were acting, what you were doing, why you were doing it, right? Okay, so that's deep. But let's tee up this video here. Sometimes I think we do such a great job of talking about these principles. The video often does an even better job. So give it a listen, allow it to take you through each of these principles, each of these chapters, and hopefully it'll allow you to dive back into this book on a regular basis as it does us so frequently. Take a listen.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically. But we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
As always, love the video there, and love those that overview of these 13 steps. But I would love to go back to that question. When we talk about faith, we often just assume that I have faith. We think of ourselves as you're having faith. But in hindsight, we can often see areas or times in our lives when we did not. What did that look like for us? What were we doing? Why were we doing it? What initially comes to mind for you there, Ann McNeil?
Wow, I have so many. I have so many examples. The first one that comes to mind was just thinking about how when I first read this book and I began to believe that it was possible, to save $1,000 a year. And I decided to, after many years of searching, right, I decided to become a contractor. And the first real test of my faith, Peter, in this journey, if you will, came when I knew absolutely nothing about the construction industry, went to trade school while working on my master's degree in finance, and decided I would learn, I'm going to be in this industry. But being a part of the mastermind group, I was challenged in my mastermind group to take the exam, take the course and take the exam. So when I took the exam, the first time I knew absolutely nothing. I just was figuring out, what was drywall, what was, these equations and all these different things. But the second time I took it, I had prepared literally for a good year and I failed the test. So what do? You activate your faith and you say, hey, I'm gonna do this, man. I took it again. Now, this is like a muscle. And for those of you that's listening, I love sharing this story because I took it again and again. And you want to take a guess, Peter? You've heard this story. How many times I took the test?
No, I don't remember.
I took that test 6 times.
Mm.
Now, when you talk about faith, what does faith look like for you? For me, it was a test of my faith. I mean, really, because I'd already started my business. I needed to have this license. I never once wavered and decided to quit. I knew because I'd heard someone previously, years prior, I heard someone say that he took the test 9 times and he finally passed. So I knew by faith that there were others who took that test and they failed like I was failing, but it did not make me a failure. But what it did, Peter, it really tried and tested me and my faith to believe by faith. And this is an action. We talk a lot of times about faith, but what's the action that's associated with it? And that's, I believe, in my career, when I began to realize I had to really say, okay, are you really, really, really doing everything you could do to pass this test? So as we begin to embark upon this conversation, I want to challenge every single one of you. Ask yourself the question, are you really, 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 really doing everything you're supposed to do by faith, with belief and trusting? But there's another principle in here, uh, Peter. The auto suggestion principle
Mhm.
and the repetition of doing that thing over and over and over and over again. It is the work, not the external, but the internal work to commit. So I had to make a commitment. Okay, I cannot do what I've been doing by studying on the run whenever I have a couple of minutes. No, what must I do? We're still talking about faith, but what additional actions must I take? And I asked the question in the beginning, how do we turn those failures into faith and the faith, convert the failures into great success, not the good success, and then we'll talk about great success. So let me fast forward. Each time I failed, after about the third or fourth time, I failed by 1 point, 2 points, 1 point, 2 points. So I had to buckle down, Peter, and I'm driving 2 hours to work. I live in West Palm. I worked in Miami, and I'm taking this test, and I'm going to class. Oh, that's right. And I'm still working on my master's degree too, yes, all at the same time. So what I ended up doing, and again, I really want to make this clear. And we have a lot of people joining us, so we want to thank all of you. But I had to really come up with a plan on what would I remove from my schedule because I had to go to work.
Mm.
And so what I ended up doing, Peter, was I would come home And my husband was very supportive, and my family was very supportive. I would come home, have dinner, and go straight to sleep. Sleep until midnight, get up at midnight, and study from midnight until 6 o'clock
Wow.
every night. Yes. On Saturday, my husband, who is a mathematician, I call him, he's a quiz. He is the smartest person I know. Yes, he's the smartest person I know. And he would test me every single Saturday, like the exam. When I would get up, I'd have to go into the office, and he has the exams. They give you test exam, prep exams. And I would have to test from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, take lunch, give him my exam. He would grade it, and then go back to testing. This is every weekend. Yes, no church, no extracurricular activities, no outings, nothing. Now, as I share this faith, first failure, right? I failed 6 times, and then I passed.
Mm.
But what happened after I passed, Peter? I helped 5 people pass that exam on the first try.
Nice.
Why? Because I didn't realize I had become a great test taker.
Huh.
So now that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Now, what about you? Can you share with us how you've used your faith? Now, I still use the repetition. I still use my affirmations. I still did all of those things. But those things were not going to get me what I needed, which was to pass that test without the
Mhm.
work.
Good stuff there, and wow, a whole lot of stuff. I took a few notes. I even asked a question in the chat. And speaking of the chat, I want to make sure that I acknowledge so many of our esteemed guests, our folks on YouTube world. I see Johnny, I see Meta, Shannon, Doretha. Good morning to you all, Michelle, Jason, Diane. Hope you all are doing well. Jennifer, hope everything is going so well. You know, and what I heard, and one of the comments that I put in the chat, I want to hear two things relative to your story. Number one, I saw a tie-in between faith and discipline, number one. But then number two, sometimes we think of ourselves as not good test takers, and that'll become who we believe ourselves to be. Many of us who are listening, watching, have said, yeah, I'm not a good test taker, or I've been evidence of not being a good test taker. And now that becomes you. But if you paid attention to what Anne said, the discipline, the deep dive into overcoming fostered someone who became a great test taker to the point of so much teaching others. Is there some truth and validity to that there, Anne, as you reflect on that experience? Especially the experience of, diving in, and now, wow, I'm actually better than I thought I was. What do you think, Anne, from that perspective?
Well, I grew up in a home where my mom was a holiness minister.
Mhm.
So, needless to say, we went to church every day and twice on Sundays. So, she taught us the word, but I did not know how to live it. So when it came to a situation like this, and up to that point, other situations in my life, I could recite, faith cometh by hearing, all of those words. But this was one of the experiences in my life where I had to put feet to my faith. And it really was the beginning of building what I call a faith muscle. And I'm learning, Peter, that the more I use this muscle, the
Mhm, mhm.
stronger it becomes, and the stronger my faith becomes to lift stronger and stronger and heavier weight. Does that make sense?
Oh my goodness, so much. So much. Which goes back to Napoleon Hill's definition, which says, first and foremost, I'm going to read a few definitions of faith, and I've been putting some stuff in the chat. Faith is a state of mind. Napoleon Hill says this on page 45 of the text, I believe. Faith is a state of mind. But he goes on to say, and it may be induced or created by affirmations and repeated instructions to the subconscious mind. And that's what I heard from you in this story there. And you did not just say I have faith, you dove into it to practice it, to practice strengthening that muscle as you described. And that's what I
Well,
heard. Yeah, go ahead.
no, absolutely. But I also want to challenge everybody. You know,
Mhm,
we talk a lot about how to develop faith, and so naturally this is around the 90,
mhm,
80, excuse me, 80s. This is 80s, the 80s. A lot of this happened during the 80s, early um the 80s, right? 1980s. I read the book in 1979 and came upon the self-confidence formula. And I want to say that, you know, we talk a lot about prayers. We're talking about developing faith. We talk a lot about prayers and affirmations and even the self-confidence formula and just so many things that we read and recite. All along this journey with this exam, I'm still in these principles.
mhm,
And so we talk about how do you develop faith. I'm still meeting with my mastermind group on Saturdays,
mhm,
and they are encouraging me and supporting me and urging me and uplifting me. Now, when I started taking this test, and you know, the Saturdays we would meet at 7 o'clock. My meeting with this test was at 8. So I still had the support. And that's why I want to challenge all of us. When you have goals, you have plans, you have a vision, a purpose for your life, who's surrounding you with these other principles to help support you? You know, I still, even then, uh, you know, reading, writing, memorizing the self-confidence formula. Yes, yes, I know I have, you know, the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. And my object at that time was what? Was to pass that test. But that really was not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal was to have a successful, profitable business that would generate me um, at that time $1,000 a year that I could save. And I laugh now because now, many years later, my desire is to generate $1,000 a day passive. That's another podcast for another day. Because then what happens is the mind by faith then draws to you every resource you need to learn how do you do a funnel, how do you level up your thinking. So I went from $1,000 to small business. So now I focus on billions, Peter. I focus on billions. And for many of you that get my emails, you know that once a month I host a $1 billion luncheon as a part of another business for Black women in construction. But again, the point is, as I continue to lift these weights, and that's what I think that faith is like a muscle.
mhm.
You know, I exercised this morning before I came on the podcast. Yes, it was early. Yes. Why? Because if I believe, if I believe, and each of you believe that your faith is like a muscle, we exercise our brains, we exercise our bodies, we exercise our thoughts, we exercise all of these things. But how do you exercise your faith if it's not staying with something long enough until the failures become successes? Not just successes, but great success. And you will go from success to success to success based upon your faith, going from a small amount of faith to a larger, to a larger, to a larger, to a larger, to a larger amount of faith. Because the work is internal, it's not external. And you're not going to see it in your hand, no, until you see it in your faith by believing in that which you are desiring and believing in that, the infinite intelligence, the spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, Are you believing before you see it? Are you believing before you see it? Because you will eventually begin to realize that, yes, the dominating thoughts of your mind will gradually reproduce themselves, yes, in the outward physical action, gradually. And so often I think, Peter, we expect it to be quick, fast, and in a hurry. Come on now. But when I look at that journey of taking that test and passing that test, and I did not want to do it. Can we talk about that, Peter?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that about, and actually what I thought instantaneously, Anne, is this, and this is for everybody who's in the room, everybody who's listening. I gotta reiterate this. There is no such thing as overnight success. There's no such thing as overnight success. So now, go ahead,
Sorry,
Aaron.
we have a question just when you finish. We have a
Okay.
question from Jason.
So now, with that statement, how can you exercise your faith in order to achieve success? Because it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen. A couple of definitions, then I got a story too. And actually, before a story, we're going to do the question, but a couple of definitions for everybody. Everyone knows the Bible definition of faith: the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. In this one, we hear faith is that confidence or trust in God. If I look at the Bible, the dictionary definition, complete trust or confidence in someone or something. You hear in this theme, confidence, trust, right? And again, now Napoleon Hill is saying, now this confidence and trust is a state of mind. Many of us, first and foremost, don't have confidence or trust in ourselves. Let me say that again. Many of us who are listening, watching on replay, don't have confidence or trust in ourselves. I've been one of those. And I'll give you a story in a little bit after we go to this question there. Anne, what is the question that's coming up, Anne?
Jason has a question that's in the chat. And let's go to his. I might have to get your help, Peter, because I'm trying.
I see. I think I see it now. Jason says, how can individuals continue to have faith in their business partners when they may not have the perseverance and discipline to follow up on their goals and business objectives? We're getting thick here. And now we're talking about faith in others. Faith in others. I'll lead it off there, and then I'll pass it to you. I teach business and entrepreneurship classes at the college level, master's level also. One of the things I've always reiterated is this. I've reiterated that a partnership in business is like a marriage in life. Here's where I'm going with this. You are married to your significant other. There's a marriage certificate. There is a trust, a bond, loyalty, a commitment. When you have entered into a business partnership as well, there is a commitment, trust, loyalty, and there should be a document, a certificate, a la a marriage certificate, that details the roles, responsibilities, but also the arrangement of this marriage, business marriage, just so that everybody understands what they're walking into. And you're right, oftentimes our partners in life, as well as in business, don't uphold their end of the bargain. Or sometimes that's us. We're human beings, right? And so in either scenario, it's so important before you step into a marriage or a business partnership that there is 100% clarity on their foundation, their background, their work ethic, what they're good at, their specialty, what you're good at, what they're good at, so that everyone can kind of be on the same page. Oftentimes we don't enter into these types of arrangements like that. And so now you're discovering that they don't have the work ethic that we thought they did. What do you do at that time there, Ann McNeil?
Okay, all right. Y'all know I'm a contrarian. Jason, you sure you want me to answer that question? Jason, are you sure? I would challenge you to try the spirit by the spirit. Try the spirit by the spirit. And what does that mean? There's a place that says that you must be equally yoked. What does that mean? If you are in a business kind of relationship with an individual, especially if it's a partnership, and this is just me, I will look for the door. I've been there, I've done that, and I can only share with you my own personal opinion and my as a small business, I can only share the time, energy, and resources that is required to pull the weight of others who are not pulling their weight. There's so many books that you can read that, first of all, it speaks to, and I'll just share some that I'm reading um, that speak to visionaries and integrators. And if you have a business partner, who's the visionary and who's the integrator in that relationship? Who's the lead and who's the sidekick? When you go to every successful person that we've heard about, from Steve Jobs, he had a sidekick. Walmart had a sidekick. Edison had a sidekick. Ford had a sidekick. Any major organization or small organization you think of that's successful, they have a sidekick. And you can only have one visionary. So if you look at the relationship that you have with that person, and they may not fit either one of those roles, then it might be time to have that conversation. And I can just share, I've had, a few business relationships with individuals that, prior, I call it before enlightenment and after enlightenment. Before enlightenment, I did, but after enlightenment, I never have had, no, another business partner. I've had teams that I've worked with in my businesses, my 5 businesses, and we are very clear about who's the visionary and who's the integrator. So let me just share with you some books. One is called Fuel, Rocket Fuel, that talks about this relationship between a visionary and integrator. One is Traction, which is excellent. One is called E-Myth Revisited, excellent. But there's so many books that you can read that shares the roles and responsibilities of these two people. And I think that once you begin, you may end up staying together, but if you do, like Peter said, document who's responsible for what. And in documenting that, look to the experts of some successful systems. 9-figure mindset is another one. One of my favorites is Darnell Jarvin's book about, millionaire mindset, if you will, but so many different books that you can read that help you, determine how do you go from where you are to where you desire to be. How can individuals continue to have, okay, so that I got that. Was that another one, Peter?
No, that was good. That was a good insight. There are so many books. You're absolutely right there, and there's so much information. I have to reiterate that point, that last point that you made, documenting, making it a legal document, a legal partnership document, so that everyone understands the seriousness of it, right? Oftentimes we get into business partnerships and we don't dot our I's and cross our T's from a legal perspective, and it puts us in a situation. oftentimes we go into business with friends and friendships end.
I'm sorry, I thought I was on mute.
Friendships end. And that's why I caution people about going into business with friends, because is that the wisest move? Or could two companies be started, yours and theirs? And maybe there's a lot of partnerships from that perspective. So
Yeah, Peter,
yeah.
I'd like to share another
Mhm.
failure in terms of faith. And I was speaking last week in New York at New York Bill and Construction, and then this week I was speaking in Chicago. And the question keep coming up from people about how, especially professionals, about when do I know that I can leave my job?
Mm. Ooh, I want to I want
And
to I want to chime in on that in a little bit when you're done there, Ann. So please, yes.
I see that smile on your face. And I think most of us come out of corporate, or we come out of some kind of experience in a job, even if it's a small business or a family business or whatever. And we say, I can do this on my own. And I share faith, struggles, faith challenge that I had because I had a lot of faith, but I had not put in the work. A lot of faith, but I had not put in the work. I had a lot of faith, but I had not put in the work. And I want to say that again, because prior to me coming to the point of taking the test, general contract exam, I had a corporate job and I decided to, um, you know, learn construction first from a corporate perspective. And so I took a leave of absence from my corporate job. Let me say that. I didn't burn the bridge. No, I didn't burn the bridge. As a matter of fact, I cemented the bridge to make sure I could go back across that bridge, right? So not faith. So my faith was not strong enough to know that once I crossed that bridge, that I should burn it. So I always left, a place to retreat. I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just sharing with you my story, my faith walk. Because again, Peter, people see us, but they don't know our story. They see the lights in these things, don't know the story. So I went to work for a contractor so I could learn the business. But I left too quickly. I thought I knew, but I didn't know. No, I did not. And I had to beg my job back,
Hmm.
Peter. After nobody told me I was so young. Nobody told me, hey, Aunt, the bills don't stop just because you decide to become an entrepreneur. The bills don't stop. How you gonna pay these bills? So I didn't give up the dream or the desire. I just knew I had to have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. And so I went back to my boss and I said, hey, look, if you need some help. And of course, when I left, he got no help. And he said, yes. But I had a written plan this time. And this is what I share with professionals. If you're considering leaving your job, my plan was save 6 months of my salary to know that my bills were paid now from my business. And if I ever had to go back and touch one of those checks, I could not. So yes, I'm growing my faith like a muscle, but the bills don't stop. So what is the plan to pay them? So that's just want to share that because that's what I share with professionals in terms of people say, oh, I want to leave my job. I started my business. Okay. Is your business growing
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
to where it can pay for itself and you too? So back to you, Peter.
Yeah, mine's a little bit of the opposite. Um, I, historically, from my perspective there, and I'm always good at having the plan A, B, C, D, E. Even when I have those plans in effect, I still hesitate. Even if I have this 6 months and 9 months, I hesitate. The faith in myself, even with those plan B, C, D, E, is lacking. That confidence and trust in myself had been lacking. So I stayed at a company 5 years too long. And I had all those things. So what is that saying about me at that time? Yeah, I stuck it out. And the reason I stuck it out so long was because in hindsight, I wanted to be sure even more, if that makes sense. I had what I needed. I even started the business. I had some part-time things I could have leaned on, but I still was like, oh no. And I wonder if sometimes that faith aspect, even first and foremost in ourselves, is lacking. And here's why I say that. When I did step out, I was fine. I was good. So what was the problem? Why didn't I have the faith in myself when I had everything lined up? And it's again, it's so much clearer, easier to see in hindsight. But now I'm at the point where I refuse to let that happen again. I can't make decisions fearful. I need to make decisions with the faith. And don't get me wrong, that faith, according to Napoleon Hill, is that preparation, that discipline that Anne spoke about, but also that repetition in my mind to know that I will be a success. And here's how I will be. Here's what I'm going to do. And repeating that to myself over and over and over again. What are your thoughts there,
I'm
Anne?
a contrarian. I don't think you will be. I think you are.
Mm,
Mhm.
mm,
And I think that that's the difference for all of us to understand. You are already
mm,
whatever you say, but you must do the inner work to become that which you say. You see, because whatever we're affirming is not true when we affirm it. It is becoming true as
mm.
we affirm. Hmm. Does that make sense?
Well, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
when we say our affirmation, I am, I am blank, I am blank, I am blank, I am blank. Something positive, right? But the realization is that at this moment, I'm not, but I'm moving toward it by the faith because I'm doing the work that
Mm,
is required. Does that make sense?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Imelda, Johnny, thank you, everybody. Jason, Dorita, all of you, every single Saturday. You have been phenomenal as you continue to share. And I don't know where the time went for two people. We're just starting.
Well, Anne, before we start to put our seats upright and put our seatbelts back on, we have these types of discussions a lot in that annual meeting every year in January. I would love for you to give us really briefly your brain child, your framework of this, what this annual meeting serves for you, but also for the people who attend.
Well, I go back to the exam. That
Mm,
was the beginning of the realization for me to know if I did not have the accountability, would never have happened. And so our desire is still to create a safe space for all of us, including our children, grandchildren, great relatives, to know that at least once a year, you have a place to come And this year, 2025, we will be at the Embassy Suites in Boca on January 3rd and 4th, 2025. The link, we're putting the link in the chat. So, Peter, if you can help me put the link in the YouTube. Register now. But also, how do you turn your failures into successes through your faith walk? It's not easy. If it were, do you need faith? So every challenge, every struggle, I would challenge each of us. Really look in the mirror. Really, really look in the mirror and see if you are doing the inner work, because all work works. All work works. January 2025, internationalmasterminders.com. All the details are there. On that Friday, we host, I call it an open mic. Share your ahas, your, successes for the year, connect with people. But then Saturday, you are at the table. You are the presenter. You are the speaker. You are on main stage at your table, sharing your goals, your successes, whatever it is that you've achieved for this year. And then what are you planning on doing for the upcoming year? That is what that annual meeting is about, Peter.
Good stuff there, Ann. So let's get ready to put our landing gear down. And one of the questions that I want to ask our audience today is, what's one thing that resonated with you based on this conversation about faith? Put it in the chat. It could be like 1 or 2 words. What resonated with you the most about today's conversation around faith, whether it was the definitions, whether it was Ann's story, whether it was Napoleon Hill's backdrop of affirmations and repetition? What resonated the most? For me today, what resonated the most, Ann, was the fact that I need to take a look at myself, and especially around my goals and objectives, and ask, how am I exercising my faith? Number one, how can I do so more? In what areas? I know how to exercise faith. I know the recipe. I know the instructions, the definitions, the Bible, Napoleon Hill's text provides that for me, and I've done it. But now moving forward, how do I ensure I can do it even better? That's my challenge to myself. As we get ready to land, my name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach helping you to shift your mindsets. You can find me on any social media channel, specifically LinkedIn and Instagram on at Dr. Peter A. James. That's at DrPeterAJames, or at shiftyourmindset.com, where we have a lot of these types of conversations for sure, especially around how to think differently, how to operate a little bit differently. And what I love about this our stories is that we can look back and see how we did or didn't and course correct for the future. That's what I love about these types of mastermind discussions, learning from others, learning from ourselves, and now applying moving forward. And that's my objective as I continue to move forward. What are your thoughts around that, Ann? And how do we stay in touch with Ann McNeil?
Well, I first want to just acknowledge something that Lynn Whitfield put in the chat. She said,
Mm-hmm.
when I was paralyzed and I couldn't walk, it was my faith that I used to recover. And Lynn, we definitely want to extend an invitation to you to come and share. You were one of the first people that I shared this book with. As you recall my story, you're definitely a part of it for 35, 40. Okay, I'll stop counting, but you get the point, Lynn. And I'm not going to get into your story. I would like to have you to do that. But I just really want to come back to your question, Peter. I think one of our takeaways is for each of us, and I'm glad Lynn shared her comment. But what is God's purpose for your life? And the faith walk, I believe, will help you to see that once you are clearer, faith is easier because now you know it's not about you. It really is a larger vision. Thank you, Jennifer. She says, doing the work to support your faith. Yes. But we want to encourage you to develop it by doing the work. It doesn't just happen. It's like I said, it's like a muscle. It has to be exercised. And Peter, you talked about, our experiences from looking back. I like to challenge us now, look forward. Look forward in how you are strengthening the faith in his purpose, not yours. Because then when you're able to transcend that thought, the actions, the resources, every single thing you need will begin to materialize. And that's what I want to encourage us, these affirmations, something as simple as the self-confidence formula, you know, yes, all of those um, thoughts and things that we remember, because you know that it is true that through the auto suggestion that any desire that you persistently hold in your mind, yes, it will give expression. Yes, and you will attain that which you desired, but are you willing to devote the time every day? So that's one of my takeaways, Peter. It is not something that's occasional. It is literally every single day, like a muscle that you're exercising for future faith works. Because, and I go back to my affirmation, and I say every day and every way I'm getting better and better. But by faith, I work, and I shared this in Chicago this week on the panel. I work like it all depends on Ann McNeil. Yes, but I have faith and trust like it all depends on God. And once I started using that affirmation, Peter, years ago, everything else, everything else is becoming easier because I don't take any of it personal. It's not about me any longer. No, 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 not any longer. It is about the fact that as a Black woman in construction, I have no problems in talking to anybody about billions or trillions because I know that what I'm learning, Peter, learning is just that journey. I've not learned it, I'm still learning. That for every girl and every woman that I can help elevate in this industry, they're going to go back and they're going to help other women and girls who look like me in this industry. Every time I am afforded the opportunity to speak, to share, to elevate individuals to strengthen their faith, everything that I've gone through, every struggle, every challenge, I know without a doubt. And I shared this, it's interesting. I just shared this, I just remembering this. In Chicago, they asked me, okay, what's the one thing? What is the one thing that you would attribute to your success? And it was one word, and the word was faith. Because I'm clear, Peter, and everybody who's listening to us, it is not about you. I'm sorry, it's not. It is about knowing your purpose. And of course, we don't oftentimes know it immediately, but on the journey, and it's like Jason asked a question about his partner. You already know the gut does not lie. I, I digress, Peter. I thought the program was just starting. But anyway, my name is Ann McNeil, and I am the master builder, helping you to elevate your business and your life to another level. I am excited about my book, How to Start and Run an effective and profitable mastermind group. And by faith, I am believing that if you are interested in converting your failures by faith into success, you will get the book, you will share the book, you will use it, and you will form your own mastermind group of accountability. It can be 2 or 3 people, but the point is who's holding you accountable to exercise your faith. You can reach me by going to annmcneil.com, and a lot of information is there. But the book, I would suggest, is the best way to turn your failures into success. And Peter, if you have any other, we want to continue before I forget to ask everybody, please subscribe to the YouTube if you have not subscribed. And thank you, Lynn Whitfield. I see you just subscribed. Thank you. And all of you that have already subscribed, we thank you for doing so. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube, as we prepare to wrap up and close the show, click the bell. Yes, Ann McNeil, subscribe to our YouTube and get the notification every week as we come. And if you're interested in being a part of our podcast, you can reach out to me at the website, annmcneil.com. And in the comments, let me know, and we will gladly have a chat with you about the possibility of having you on the podcast. All right. So, Peter, anything else before we wrap up? It is after 9 o'clock.
Another great show, another very, very insightful, very informative, very awareness. I really, truly appreciate this conversation. And thank you so much for being so transparent today there, Ann McNeil. Hey, folks, same time next week, same channel. If you subscribe, you'll get the alert. In the meantime, please be safe and continue to think and grow rich.